Hey there guys. We recently finished another game over on Twitch, and unlike most of the games, this is actually a pseudo replay of a game that I started on YouTube years ago and finally finished, or more correctly replayed on Twitch, because I had just gotten to a point where I wasn't able to play it on YouTube and it had been too long and the plot was very confusing. And of course, as you can tell from the title of this, the game in question is Xenogears. Before I begin, I do want to give a massive thank you, shout out to Ness Kirby. Ness Kirby subscribed because of my Xenogears blind run, and then whenever I got where I couldn't keep playing it, he just very politely poked me over and over again, hey, you should get back to Xenogears, hey, you should get back to Xenogears, hey, you should get back to Xenogears, hey, you should get back to Xenogears. And I thank him forever for that, because it was a game that I had played enough to know it was good, but not amazing, because I hadn't gotten to the really... I was still in the they were setting things up stage, and so I hadn't gotten to the meat of the story yet. And since I knew I'd have to replay hours and hours and hours of content in order to get back into the game, I just was never going to do it, except he just kept insisting, no, you need to do this, and he is absolutely right. So, again, thank you, Ness Kirby. Thank you. So, what are my thoughts on it? It's a good game. Go play it. Seriously, the game's almost 20 years old. Go play it. I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to try and avoid as many spoilers as I can, but there will be some things that by talking about them, I'm going to spoil. By that same token, if you played Xenogears before, and you notice that I'm, saying something that isn't quite entirely right, or is leaving out some key details, I'm probably doing that intentionally, because I'm trying to keep from spoiling things for people who may not have played it. So, keep that in mind. But seriously, no, I'm not kidding. I very seriously thought about just saying, it's good, go play it, and then letting that be my entire retrospective, but I think you guys deserve more than that, despite how that sums up my opinion on it. Xenogears is very often called a flawed masterpiece, and I think that's a fair title, because it does have some issues, but almost all of its issues are things that either are out of its control, and you just sort of have to just kind of accept, because there's no better way it could have been done, or are things that, frankly, now that I've beaten it, I don't even care about, It's like whenever, you have a crush on a girl, and one of your friends is like, yeah, but what about this? And you just kind of look at them, and you're like, who gives a damn about that? You know what? That's kind of the way I feel about the, very minor things that are wrong with Xenogears, but in the interest of giving a complete retrospective, I will acknowledge them. There are three key issues that Xenogears has, at least in my opinion. Number one, and this is the only one that I consider to be really Xenogears' fault, the Xenogears was made right as RPGs started becoming a lot more complex, but tutorials hadn't quite gotten 100% yet. Tutorials weren't really things people knew how to make, and so there's a lot of systems in Xenogears that aren't ever really well explained. It's just sort of like, we're going to give you this complex system, and over the course of the game, you're going to figure it out. The problem is, if you don't figure it out, you're just going to die a lot. And it can be very frustrating, because the game doesn't really tell you what it expects you to do. Really quick example of that is that, as you go through the game, similar to, Chrono Cross, each character has a weak, medium, and strong attack. And as you keep using these weak, medium, and strong attacks, eventually you'll learn combinations called death blows. Where if you do, say, weak, medium, then the character will go into an extended attack animation into a massive combo that will do huge amounts of damage. However, that represents the character having mastered that particular combination. If you keep on using that combination after you've mastered it, you don't get anywhere, you've already mastered it. Which means that a lot of gamers are going to learn their first couple of death blows, and then just spam the hell out of those, because they do more damage than their normal sequences, without ending with a death blow. But what the game doesn't explicitly tell you is that if you do that, you're not learning any other death blows, because you're only using moves you've already mastered. So eventually you'll get far enough in the game where the bosses you're running into will, the war of attrition, you using the entry-level death blows is just not good enough anymore. And so that's a problem. But the game, since it never really explained that part of the system, that's kind of what happened to me the first time I played. I got to a point in the game where I could not progress because my death blows weren't strong enough. And I didn't understand the system because the tutorial wasn't. It basically just said, yeah, if you use different button combinations, you'll learn different stuff, and that's where it left it. That's where it left it off. So that was a very, very frustrating bit because the tutorial system wasn't where it needed to be. And that's not the only one that's like that. There are a couple of different. And very, very much later in the game, you do gain Omni-Gears. But again, Omni-Gears, the only real difference between an Omni-Gear and a regular gear is that it has a special Omni mode that has a chance of activating every turn, but only when you're at level 3. If you don't know what level 3 means, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of explanation, but basically, with an Omni Gear, if you just don't use your ultra powerful attack at level 3, there is a stacking chance that you will go into a much, much, much more powerful mode. That's not really explained. So, slightly frustrating, but again, I have a hard time really holding the game against that because of just when it was made. Up and before then, all RPGs had very, very simplistic systems. You know, Final Fantasy VI, you have espers that you can equip, and you'll learn spells off them. And a couple of characters have some weird gimmicks, and that's it. You know, you don't have these really deep systems like you started to when the PlayStation came out. And so yeah, the game just didn't really have the ability to write tutorials wasn't there yet. The second issue the game has, and this is probably its biggest issue, but also the issue that I have the least time holding against it, or the least ability to hold against it. So, Xenogears was originally supposed to be Final Fantasy VII. But as it developed, it took on a much darker tone than Final Fantasy usually have. Religion was heavily discussed in it, and religion is kind of a taboo subject in the West. And they just realized that it was a much more mature game than the Final Fantasy series had been. And plus, they kind of realized that it was going to be a longer story, and the Final Fantasy games were typically disconnected. So, they made the decision to start a Final Fantasy VII, basically do another game as Final Fantasy VII, have this be a different intellectual property. Around the time they finished the first disc of Xenogears, they, being Square, realized that Final Fantasy VII was going to be something really special. And so they pulled funding out of Xenogears and moved it over to Final Fantasy VII. And so Disc 2 of Xenogears is just this... It's them suddenly working with substantially less money and less ability to get things done than they had for the first disc. And they try. They do everything they can to try and make it work. But it's a massive shift in style. You end up with huge amount of exposition dumps coming in, where you'll just sit there and read for 20 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes may be an exaggeration, but just a very long situation where it will just display text on the screen and have pictures of what's going on. And then you might fight a boss. And then a whole bunch more reading, and it almost turns into a visual novel at that point, with occasional gameplay elements. And for what it is, it's handled really well. Again, it's handled about as well as you could possibly hope it would be. But it's heartbreaking to see, because Disc 1 is so good, and then they just lost the funding for Disc 2 and had to scramble to try and get something out the door. So, obviously, it's a massive shift, and it's a massive shame, but it's one that I cannot hold against the game. I can't mark the game down because they ran into problems outside their control. The publishing company took their money away. And even for Square, it's as much as it breaks my heart to see what happens at Xenogears, I also cannot honestly blame Square for choosing to divert funds to Final Fantasy VII, because although I like Xenogears more as a game, Final Fantasy VII did absolutely remake the gaming landscape. I mean, I can't say that was the wrong call, to say, wow, this game needs to be as polished as possible. This has potential to be amazing and big. It was. So, although, like I said, I do actually like Xenogears more. I will get more, when I talk about the good, I'll get more into why I think Xenogears is a stronger game than Final Fantasy VII. And then the third problem, and this is a funny problem to have. It's more of than a problem, but I am too old to be playing this game. I wish I had played this game when I was a teenager, because every once in a while there would be a really interesting plot point, that was kind of spoiled because I know more than I think they expected me to. There's a character in it named Id. Id is eventually revealed to be kind of an incomplete character. You know, he's very, you know, he's very feral, he's animalistic. A lot of his more logical and emotional sides have been sort of just shut down and just sort of left him with almost his just base instincts. And the problem with that is that if you're familiar with the psychological terms id, ego, and superego, that's what the id is. So when that was revealed, I was kind of like, yeah, you named the character Id. Of course he's going to be very, very animalistic and very, very, you know, it is not going to be super reasonable. And I'm extremely selling, you know, this plot point short. There's a lot more to it, but like I said, I'm trying to avoid spoilers. It ended up being something that I was much more in tune with where that was going, just because I'm more knowledgeable than I needed to be. A similar situation happened when you are in a factory where they're manufacturing food called Soylent, and if you know what Soylent is, you know what I'm about, what you're going to find out in that factory, and I did. And so again, it was like, well, yeah, whenever the twist came. So just little things like that, and just it kind of ruined my playthrough. But again, it's because I'm playing this having been through college and having been out in the world, and I just know a lot of references that I wouldn't have known when I was a teenager. And I feel like, to a certain degree, a lot of the magic of the game was lost on me because was aware of more than I should have been. And to a certain degree, I think that happens a lot to me anyway. I've been playing RPGs for years and years and years, and I've seen a lot. And I know there's a ton of stuff in Xenogears that was fresh and new and interesting when Xenogears came out, but by now, when I'm playing it, 3 console generations later, I may not even notice it because Xenogears did it so well, and other games that copied Xenogears have done it so well, that it's just expected now. It's hard for me to go back and put myself in the mindset of the very early 2000s, or actually, I think, one second, when did Xenogears come out? This is where I'm not prepared. 1998. So, it's hard for me to go back and put myself in the frame of 1998, what was the norm? So, but obviously, I obviously can't hold the game, accountable for the fact that I'm older when I play it. How dare they? But that's it. And you can see, as I'm talking about this, the only real complaint I have with the game is the tutorial system didn't explain everything. And that's a really, really, really shallow complaint, considering all the good stuff. So, let's get to the good stuff. Oh my goodness, first of all, there is so much good to talk about when it comes to Xenogears. So much. But I've got to start with the absolute best thing about Xenogears. And that is, I'm going to butcher his name, but Yasunori Mitsuda. Yasunori Mitsuda is the composer of Xenogears. He also did Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, a lot of the other Xeno games he was involved in, and my god, when he does Xenogears, he puts on a goddamn master class. It's astounding. I have a playlist of things that play whenever I am, playing games, or sometimes when I'm streaming things that aren't, like, really, really deep games, and I just want background music on, because maybe the background music isn't all that good by itself for whatever game I'm playing. I think Xenogears has more tracks on it than damn near any other game. I think the only other game that has it beat is Persona 4 Arena, and that's really just because when I made the playlist, I was lazy and used Persona 4 Arena to get, like, all the Personas. So, I actually think if you go in and look, that it probably has any individual Persona game beat. But I just, it was like, Elizabeth's theme in Arena was, Battle for Everyone's Soul. Use was Reach Out for the Truth. So it was like, I would just use Arena to get all of the different ones from all the different games. Which isn't really fair, when you think, when you look at it that way, but, it's so, it handles the music handles itself really, really well. You can have really, really awesome themes in gaming. You know, I know Tales of Zestiria, when I was playing it, there were a lot of themes that just really spoke to me, and a lot of themes that I love. I still love the Fire Temple theme in Zestiria. I love Rising Up. But those are very in-your-face themes. Those are the easier themes to record. You kind of make them in isolation. You're like, okay, I want something that speaks to fire. I want something that speaks to this thing that's going on. And so it's this theme that reinforces what's happening on screen. With Xenogears, all of the music is good, but it's sublimated. Alright? There were very, very, very few situations where I found myself actively listening to the music. And that sounds bad. That sounds like something that you shouldn't say. You know, it's like, oh, well, then the music can't be that good if you don't notice it. But what that really means is that the music, it doesn't describe the action on screen. It adds to it. It becomes part of the action. It's just the theme that accompanies the game, and it makes the game better. You know, like I said, the fire theme is something I actively listen to and like as I go through. But the Xenogears theme, it just becomes part of the gameplay experience. It combines with the game, and it's just it's so amazingly good. You've got very, very heroic themes. You've got very, very tense themes. You've got really emotional themes. There are some of them that there's a lot of the Chrono Trigger themes that do this too, but it's just the range that Xenogears has. And if you just listen to the background, I'm playing a lot of my favorite ones in the background as this video goes on. It's amazing. It's great. Characterization is phenomenal. Again, and this is hard. I have to try and just forget the last almost 20 years of gaming in order to talk about this intelligently. But the main characters, Faye and Ellie, are some of, if not the best main characters of any game I've ever played. And I mean that sincerely, alright? They may actually be the best. And if not, they're certainly better than anything that came before them. Their story is very slowly revealed through the course of the game. And it's a story that I didn't see coming. I mean, whenever it was revealed, there are some reveals that happen, and and I just sort of gasp, and I lean back, and I'm really surprised. This one, it made me, it forces you to re-see the entire game. And the game does that over and over and over again, but almost never is it a shocking twist out of nowhere. The reveal happens and you're like, oh! Rather than, it's not something that, as soon as the reveal is revealed, so much about the game world that you were wondering about makes sense. But at the same time, it's hard to pull that off, because normally when there's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't really make sense, if I spend time and actively think about it, I will figure the twist out. But here, very rarely did that happen. There were some that I saw what was going on, but the game world goes so much deeper than I expected it to. And they do a fantastic job of, they're not presenting the story in a way to surprise you. Have you ever played those stories where the twists happen and you can tell that the game designers have manipulated events the entire time in order to allow you to think one thing's going on while they're working on the twist? That's not what Xenogears does. The strength of Xenogears is that they had the entire story planned out from the beginning, going back millennia. And then they just told the story starting from the moment that, you take over, with everyone acting in a way that's consistent with what's really going on, but not explaining to you why they're doing what they're doing. And so as the, reveals come in, and as you learn the secret history of the world, it just suddenly makes sense, all the stuff you didn't understand. But it doesn't feel forced or fabricated. It's just like, oh, that's what was going on. Okay. Oh, that's what's going on. And they also just do a incredible job of just slowly pulling back the tapestry of the game. A lot of games will do this where as you venture further and further out into the game, you just gain access to new continents, new areas, new towns. And everyone in the town, it's just, it almost feels like in RPGs no one ever leaves their town. Because no one ever discusses the other areas you go to. And so it's almost like, the world just seems like a collection of disparate locations. In Xenogears, it's not like that. In Xenogears, there's constant references made to other points in the known world. And, theory and, political maneuvering and, are these guys moving against us? Are they going to attack this other city? There's a lot of discussion going on. And so, what's really impressive is that as you keep playing, new locations come available that are new to you because they haven't been talked about. But there's a very good reason why they're not being talked about, and why most people aren't aware that they exist. And again, it's fantastic. It's not, that's the problem. It's one of those Xenogears, other than the main character, Xenogears doesn't absolutely blow away the competition in any one area. I can't say Xenogears has the best world building I've ever seen. That goes to Legend of Heroes. I can't say that Xenogears has the best supporting cast I've ever seen. That probably goes to the Tales series, But everything comes off with such a level of polish, especially, like I said, in Disc 1, that it's magnificent. I know I'm just sitting here just talking about how good this game is, but it's so good. There's so many moments in it that just are amazing. And I don't want to talk about too many of them explicitly, because I don't want to spoil things, but it's like when you first see the final boss revealed, and it takes the idea of Deus Ex Machina and starts treating it very, very literally, and it's not something you ever thought you would actually see. It has so many very, very interesting, but very, very highbrow intellectual ideas, and there's so much to delve into, and so much to understand, and so much to research. Oh my god. I really, really, really like Xenogears. I know I'm just rambling at this point, but you've got, it's a story. At the end of the game, you've got, very, very often, whenever you finish an RPG, the end of the game is just a collection of cliches. There's something, some entity that is threatening the world. And you and your plucky band of heroes are the only ones that can stop them. So you go off and you save the day. And sometimes, there will be a, big, think of all the people that we know that will get killed and we have to fight hard. And sometimes there'll be a, oh, don't worry, just keep pushing forward and everything will work out. And I've seen the end of so many games. Xenogears' ending, even today, shocked me and surprised me. First of all, when I talk about there's some big evil thing destroying the world, no, in Xenogears, it actually is. I mean, by the time you're getting there, there's a level of destruction going on that, would make Kefka go, holy shit! It's, Kefka destroyed the damn world, but he wasn't very efficient at it. The final boss of Xenogears is bloody efficient at what he's doing. And the final boss, the actual way the final boss happens, the way the fight is introduced, is one of the best examples I've ever seen in an RPG. You know how in Final Fantasy VI, you go and you fall down into that area where all the Moogles are, and Terra falls unconscious, so the Moogles join with Locke, and they make a whole bunch of different parties, and you have to go down and fight, move the Moogles and, fight all the little individual guys before you finally go down and fight the actual boss. And if you're smart, what you do is you try and have three groups do interceptions and do what they can in order to, make a path for the good, healthy group to go out and actually fight the boss directly. Well, the final fight is kind of like that, only handled so much better. You've got the final boss, and these 4 support orbs that are separate encounters, so you could either choose to switch into parties other than your main character, and go take out these support orbs, and if you've been focusing on them and leveling them up, and they have good equipment, you can go and you can take out the 4 supports, which makes the boss super, super, super easy. But everyone except your main character is now substantially weaker. Unlike most RPGs, when you're in your mech, you can't fully heal. Your mech will will use resources as you keep using him. And so as you go through the 4 ones, you are weakening yourself, but you're also weakening the boss. Or, if you've got just a really powerful A-team and you haven't been really paying attention to everyone else, then the other option you have is to just go for it. Ignore the 4 support things and just go straight for the throat. It makes the boss so much more difficult, and both of them are acceptable. Both of them make sense to do. Because the boss, what's basically happening is the boss is still fighting you at full power, and more than full power, actually. Because taking out the orbs actually weakens him. But the orbs are also using their, abilities from high orbit, basically. So there will be times where there's like 5 things hitting you at once. It's such a beautiful final battle. And Faye, the main character, I'm not going to get into a lot of what his story is, because like I said, I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, but his sort of mentality when going into the last fight isn't what I was talking about before. He's not just, the brimming optimist. The things are still going to work out, guys. He's not even really doing it to try and protect, the world and make sure that no one suffers. He almost has like a nihilistic outlook where the person that is most important to him in the world has been abducted and maybe dead. And he very much, this isn't really stated, but you get the very real sense from him that he would rather die than live in a world without her. So even though the odds are stacked up to the heavens against him, he would rather go in and fight the impossible than live in a future where she isn't around. And that doesn't sound amazing, but just with the journey you've been through with them and understanding their past, and it's really, really, really beautiful. I realize this is a bit weird of a retrospective. I'm usually much more analytical, but this game is something special. And so I'm going to end with what I said at the beginning. It's good. Go play it.
Like a proud wolf alone in the dark, with eyes that watch the world, and my name like a shadow on the face of the moon. Broken mirror, a million shades of light, the old echo fades away. But just you and I can find the answer, and then we can run to the end of the world. We can run to the you and I can find the answer, and then we can run to the end of the world. We can run to the end of the world. To me